Next trick, Tom. It's a multi-tool.
Super close, man.
What is up, shredders? Today, Tom Corn is going to be teaching you how to grind. Which grind, you say? Pretty much all of them. We are going through all the beginner and some of the advanced grinds also. So what are we starting with, Tom?
We got some double peg. We've done a video slightly on this one and our other 5 easiest beginner tricks, but it's just like the starting platform for grinding, so that's where we'll start. So obviously, you're going to find like a shorter hubba to where you don't have to hop too high. Like this one's perfect because your wheel's only like 4 or 5 inches off the ground. And all you need to do is jump onto both of your pegs. So just make sure you're hopping high enough and land on it. You have to practice hopping on and keeping your body weight over the hubba slash whichever foot is on the hubba. Because if you're just hopping on and you're keeping your body weight centered, you'll kind of explode off the hubba like this.
I got it.
All right, Tom, I think you got enough practice blowing your pegs off of the thing.
And go.
So to avoid doing that, what you're gonna do is when you get onto the hubba, instead of staying straight up, see how I'll just fall off? You have to stay over your front pedal, or whichever pedal is on the hubba. If you keep like your head or your main body weight lead over it, you'll just stand up. So when you hop on, just make sure your body is leaned over the coping slash your pedal. And you'll just slide on it. Right into the water. Peg. And then you could also double peg down rails, down hubbas. You can go up hubbas, up rails. Thing was sticky. Well, I took all the rust off the first time, I guess.
Tech tip, bring whack.
So once you've learned the double peg, you could also be doing a feeble first. Both of them are about the same level. I personally learned a feeble first because I thought they were a little easier to learn the balance. And what a feeble is instead of putting both of your pegs on, like a double peg, instead you put your front wheel up on top and just your back peg is on the hubba, which makes it easier because you can kind of steer with your front wheel, but it makes it kind of scary because you can steer off of the hubba as well. So when hopping onto a feeble, you're gonna have to listen to like the same rule as the double peg, with kind of staying over the hubba slash staying over your foot that is going to be on the hubba. We'll go back to all the blowouts now. Feeble blowouts are way scary. I'm gonna cover it all down. I'm gonna cover it all.
Covering it all with maple syrup.
You also have to stay pretty straight. If you turn too much, your wheel will come off. As you see, your tire has to be decently straight, or else up here will push itself off if you turn. See how your tire hits? And it's pushing the peg off. So you have to make sure this front wheel stays straight and as close to the coping as possible. You can always be like a couple inches over, but you'll slide the fastest if you're closer to a straight line. And then the worst case is if you turn in, is you usually just fall into a double peg, which is not a big problem. You also want to start on a hubba kind of like this, where it's short, because you're gonna have to hop a little bit higher to get your front wheel up on top. Versus the double peg, where you're just hopping with both wheels just a couple inches. And now we'll give you some examples of some feebles on here. We'll put this in the beginning of the video. To choose which side you grind on doesn't fully matter because both sides you can grind on. Most people go off of putting their pegs, like if you're just gonna ride 2 pegs, to put them on the side that you ride front foot forward, because then it's out of the way of the peg. Because if you ride right foot forward and you have pegs on the left, then your foot is gonna hit your peg a little bit right here. But my bike has all 4 pegs, So no matter what, I have to do that. So I had to get used to riding with my foot a little bit further forward so I don't clip the peg. I gotta go feeble stuff now.
Feeble, the big one. That was always
Just the whole top?
Yeah.
All right.
Feeble rail.
Let's go up the big hubba.
Oh, okay.
I'm not feebling any rails here.
Hey, where's Mr. Smith?
Mr. Smith, the friendly next door neighbor. We went from a double peg, and we went feeble, which is front wheel up, and the Smith is, you guessed it, the opposite. Front wheel grinding and back wheel up on the hubba. These grinds, you can't slide for very long because your wheel is pointing off of the hubba. So these won't slide very long because your wheel is pointed at a diagonal angle, so it will automatically roll itself off. Unless you're a savage, you can lock into rails, which I can't do.
We'll lock into rails.
People like lock into rails on Smiths and just slide them for months. Like Brady Tweedy, he can oversmith that whole rail. Smiths are really easy, and it's honestly one of the most fun grinds to fill because you're so lean forward, and then to get out of it, you just pull up really hard and you manually drop. So it feels really cool. You actually have to hop pretty high to do these, and it's kind of awkward because you're hopping up and then kicking out your back end and landing at like a front angle. So it will feel kind of weird the first couple times, and when you land in it, you're gonna wanna be leaned all the way back almost. And to get out of them will take you a while. You'll probably just kind of roll out of them like that a couple times. Locking into a Smith, you have to keep your back end pretty kicked out, but not too far like that or else you'll just crash, obviously. But the further out you have it, the longer it's gonna let you ride it. Sometimes you will miss the Smith and you'll just land like this, and then it's just like riding down a stair step. You're just gonna go ba-doop, ba-doop. And other times you can hop to get to a Smith and you're just gonna land on the top. Sometimes you hop too high. Other times it'll just drop right into it, and as soon as you hit it, just pick your bars back up and you'll kind of like wheelie off of it. And now I will give you good and bad examples of how to Smith and how not to.
What was that, good or bad?
That was just weird. I thought I was gonna miss it on purpose. I'll hit my peg sometimes if I don't like actually give it a little hop away. You'll just kind of coast off into your back peg. So you need to practice kind of like pulling out away from the hubba itself. They are also really good for going like feeble into a Smith because you can just roll your peg and just barely pick your bike up and drop into a Smith. And those are like a good intermediate trick that feels really cool to do, but they're not too hard to do. It'll take you a long time to figure out like the balance of like transferring from a feeble into the Smith. Like the balance is kind of weird, but the longer you try it, the easier it gets. And like with anything, practice will make perfect. All right, now we're gonna do Smiths in a bunch of places. I'll feeble up and then Smith at the top.
All right, Tom, what's the next trick?
The next trick is, I would almost say more advanced or intermediate. It's an ice pick grind. And an ice pick grind is when you're just on the back peg. It's kind of like a manual. So if you're practicing manuals a lot, or like if you feel like you're really good at manuals, ice picks shouldn't be much harder. So it's just like a manual. You're just gonna hit your back peg. And if you come to the back side, you're gonna want as much of your peg on the hubba as possible so you have a good flat surface. And if you lean too much, it's gonna pick your bike up and make you dig in and pull sideways. So when you do an ice pick, you wanna land flat and good, and then just stay lean back like a manual, and you'll slide really good. Now I'll do a couple ice picks on here and teach you how to lock into it. But really, this one's just a trick that you're just gonna have to practice a lot. Yeah, you can loop out, but it's usually pretty slow because you kind of tell more on your peg than your wheel because it's a smaller balance point. So you just have like a little bit and you'll feel it just start to roll. It pops up.
Right to the puddle every time. It's literally in your perfect landing zone. You got a padded landing, Tom.
I know, I'm cheating. Nitro Circus.
Doing it in the water, Tom. Nitro Circus.
When you're ice picking down things, it tends to be a little bit easier, especially on a short rail, because you kind of just like chink it, and then you can work your way onto sliding a little bit more and more as you're getting comfortable. Quick tip, when you're grinding, you'll notice that there are square rails and round rails. Round rails are a lot easier to do certain tricks because your pegs will kind of roll over onto them and let you lock in. Two tricks I think are easier on flat rails are double pegs and feebles. But even an ice pick is going to be harder on a flat rail because you have to be flat on it. If it's a round rail, you kind of have some give to have some roll on it. This last trick is definitely a hard trick to do. It's easier on a rail than it is on like a hubba, but regardless, I'd say this is an expert to pro trick. And what we're going to be showing you is a tooth hangover grind. We don't have too many of the best places to show you. In other words, we don't have a flat rail here, but I'll still teach you how to do it on a hubba, and then I'll do it down a rail and then like up the end of a rail for you. It's just done on the front peg. When you put your front peg on and you slide it and then you pop it off. That's a toothpick. A tooth hangover is when you stick your front peg on and you swing your back end over the hubba and then you have to pop off of it and go over the hubba. But when you're doing this trick on like a handrail, you can kind of cheat because there's not going to be the flat surface. So you can pick your front end up and then it can drop down normally. Here, I'll show you on the down rail. Toothpicks are really fun. You can do them anywhere. And it doesn't even matter which side of peg you do it on. So now I'm going to do a tooth hangover for you. These are really hard. Oh! Yeah, see, sometimes you'll case your back wheel and it feels like it's just going to throw you.
Let me try this real quick.
That is so scary. Now I'm going to do it in my least favorite place, down a square rail.
At least they're slightly less bad on square rails.
No, they're way worse. Now I'm going to try to do one kind of like at the end up that rail. That's like the basic grinds of BMX. We added a couple hard ones. We started off with like the really easy ones. There are quite a few more expert to pro level ones that we didn't go over, like crank arm grinds, crooked grinds, and like just like spins into grinds. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, check out the other how-tos on the channel. And if you have any certain tricks that you want us to make videos on, leave a comment down below and we will get to it as fast as we can. Oh, yeah! Worst case scenario.
Got Gravedigger over here freaking doing monster truck rally.
I'm just trying to go all the way in there.
You won't. You won't. You won't smith that.
Scoot back a little bit.
You won't smith it.